to moderate the second Sarasota County Schools Digital Town Hall. Thank you so much for joining us. We welcome the audiences that are watching now via Facebook Live, also SarasotaCountySchools.net, the website, the Education Channel on Comcast 20, and Frontier 33. Now, we invite more questions to come in via Facebook. We thank some of you who have already emailed us your questions. We're also accepting questions on Twitter. We have the first half hour. We're talking about a very, very important subject. That is school safety and security. For the next half hour, that will be our focus. And the second half hour, we'll be talking about some other topics. But right now, I'd like for the panel to introduce themselves to you.
Good evening. My name is Todd Bowden. I'm the Superintendent of Schools.
Good evening. Bridget Ziegler, Chair of the Sarasota County School Board.
Good evening. Scott Lempe, Assistant Superintendent and Chief Operations Officer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Andrews. I'm the Director of Safety and Security.
Karen Schmidt, Principal of Venice Middle.
And Paul Burns, Principal of Riverview High School.
And I'm Scott Ferguson, and I'll be answering your questions or asking the questions on Twitter that you submit.
And I'm Mina Ashrab. I'll be monitoring social media tonight as well.
Thank you so much. Before we get started with this conversation, Dr. Bowden, we have some news about Dr. Burns, who's seated on our panel. What is that news?
Well, I love to make him blush, but we are awful proud of Dr. Burns. Dr. Burns has accepted a Deputy Chancellor position with the Florida Department of Education. So as the saying goes, it is our loss and their gain. But I think much like the other districts in the state, we are going to benefit by having his experience at the state level. And so we'll be looking to find a new principal at Riverview High School. But we are sure proud of Dr. Burns and wish him well in his new position.
Yes. Congratulations, Dr.
It's been a great opportunity for me to serve the students in Sarasota County Schools, and this opportunity now gives me a chance to serve all students across the state of Florida and all 67 districts.
Thank you. Well, let's get this conversation started with you, Dr. Bowden. What is the school district's policy and approach to keeping our schools safe, the students, the faculty, parents, guests on campus?
Well, you will hear us say frequently that our number one priority is safety and security. We understand that we are entrusted with the children of this community, and we want to make sure that we have a culture of safety and we have multiple layers of security. And so we talk about a systems approach, from the way that we screen people who interact with kids to the way that we control who comes off and on our campuses, to our physical environments, to the way that we respond to threats. We have multiple layers of security, but they're all with the idea that we have this tremendous responsibility to look after the kids of this community while they're in our charge.
Yes. Yeah. Please add.
Absolutely. So I would just expand upon the systems approach. And so if you think about an automobile and all the various components of an automobile, individually those components don't give you an automobile. It's how all those components are put together in a particular way and how they interact together. And so we are doing the same thing with safety and security. That systems approach is very synchronistic in that the components work together, both hardware and software, and our teachers and staff, and our students and our parents. So it's all part of a broader system approach of safety and security.
Vicki, I've always kind of looked at think about it in the context of a four-legged stool. Leg one is the physical security of our campuses, the things that we do to make our buildings safe. Leg number two is knowing something about the people that have access to our students, whether that's teachers or parents or visitors in general. Leg number three is the things that happen at the schools, their emergency plans, their drills, whether it be fire drills or lockdown drills, but the things that happen as part of a school security plan. And then fourth, and I think one of the legs that gets forgotten a lot, is our relationship with local law enforcement. When Mike and I talk about kind of the operational capability of our safety and security plan, it really lies with wonderful relationships with local law enforcement agencies, not just the SROs, but the agencies themselves.
So it's the community working together.
Yes, ma'am. See, once you, Dr. Bowden talked about culture, once you get to a culture where security is everyone's business, that's when your schools become safe.
All right. Board Chair Bridget Ziegler, what exactly is the role of board members like yourself in this conversation?
Well, I like some of the words that were used as the culture of safety and really ensuring. So the board sets policy, approves a budget, and so one of the things that we do, and most recently in the budget aspect, is we made security the priority of a major budget priority, and so you'll see that implemented in a number of the infrastructure elements that we've done. But as a board member, our goal is to ensure that all policies reflect that culture of safety from A to Z, and also ensure that we're constantly evaluating to make sure we're keeping up with the times.
Okay, here is a question we received via email. It's from somebody by the name of Talia, and she asks, what is being done to protect children from security breaches? Now, she's referring to rumors involving weapons at Lamarck Elementary and adds, luckily there were no incidents.
Well, I have to tell you, I think that is the biggest issue that we face today. We've had a number of issues this school year that originate outside of our schools, typically on social media platforms, in which a variety of threats or statements that were made that we take very seriously. Yeah. You know, the one caution that I always want to give is that when we deal with threats, particularly those that come from social media, we don't have the ability to talk about intent. We don't know if it was joking or in jest, and so we have to read those with the worst possible intentions. And so when we talk to our kids, you know, we want to make sure that they understand that our response is going to be predictable, that if you put something on social media, we're going to take you at your word. We're going to assume if you say something is going to happen at school the next day, then we're going to respond like a legitimate threat has been made against that school for the following day. And so it should be predictable that if you do something on social media, that a sheriff's deputy is going to come and knock on your door, because we have to get to the root. Our first step is always to figure out the source of the threat, and then we do a threat assessment to see if it's a credible threat. But we're never going to underreact to a threat that we receive.
Yep.
What about training students to know that, you know, there are some consequences when you put something on social media, and they can be dire, actually?
You know, I use the word predictable, and that's what I want to be, is that if you do something, you should be able to predict the result. Is that if you make a threat against a school, you should understand we're going to take it serious, we're going to involve law enforcement, and we're going to investigate that fully, and that there's going to be accountability at the end of it. You know, we've had some pretty high-profile instances in which students didn't understand that we would take them seriously, and weren't able to predict the result of them doing that. That they thought, well, it was just a joke amongst friends. Well, there are no jokes amongst friends. Is that someone is going to take you at your word, and you know, this is probably a good time to stop and brag on our students, because we don't travel in those social media circles. Is that I don't monitor Facebook and Twitter and all the other platforms. Is that in all of these instances, we've had students or members of our community come forward and say, this isn't right, and someone in authority needs to know. So I don't want to get too far into this conversation without bragging on those students who had the good sense to say, wait a minute, I need to involve an adult, and they've brought us screenshots or they forwarded messages and said, this is out there, and we think someone in a position of authority ought to know about it.
And I think that's really important, that it's embedded in our culture, and we're evolving. Social media is a totally new threat that we've never really considered, and it's continuing to grow. And so everyone plays a role when it comes to safety and security of the operations of the district. But and Dr. Bowden made a great mention of that. The students had been proactive in certain elements to raise awareness, and fortunately it was without incident. But that's the continuous conversation, and families at home need to make sure that they're sharing that, the consequence component of it, and even if it's a joke, it can't be taken lightly. And so just really embedding that culture of safety and responsibility into the everyday conversation.
And we've added that as well. That's very true, what the chair said, that because we play a role in that as well as a school, and so we've begun to hold advisories and also teach our children about social media and the appropriate uses of social media. So we've been actually very proactive about that now, to think about, we want to share with the kids what Dr. Bowden said about, you have to be careful about what you post on social media. If you post a threat, those will be taken seriously. So we've begun to educate our students about that, because we play a role in that as a school as well.
Well, actually, that's very true. And even at the middle level, we get our 6th graders, they're babies. They're coming to us from 5th grade. And so we hold an annual assembly program, and we talk about these things and, making good decisions and what the consequences may be. And for our 7th and 8th graders, they're a little bit more sophisticated at that point. We actually visit every classroom that first week of school, and these are the things that we talk about. And we bring a group with us. We bring the guidance counselor, our SRO, the assistant principals, and we talk with our students about these situations that they can get themselves into when they're not making good decisions.
It seems that you are taking a proactive approach. I do want parents to understand that they have some onus too, and some ownership in this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was going to say that's just the conversation that we all play a role, everyone, and that's the way to ensure the safety of our students, but ensuring that they're having that conversation with their children to say the responsible behavior, but also watching over what they're doing. So again, everyone playing a part is what ensures the safety of our students.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I would add is that it's, the modern day equivalent to yelling fire in a crowded movie theater, threats that come over the internet. So as it has been stated, it's very difficult to understand, to know the context of a threat, and so it is the threat environments, the threats that all school districts across the country today are facing and having to deal with. So, and I think there's a evolving piece going along with that, but we're absolutely planned responses, and every single one of them has to be investigated and run down, and we've done that over the course, late evening hours, early morning hours, before school opens, and all that. So taken very seriously.
I see. Here is an email question from a middle school parent named Anna. It deals with lockers. I'm sure you've had to deal with lockers. Why does Macintosh Middle not have lockers? Students have all their stuff in backpacks and have to carry them around all day. What's up with that?
So I guess let me talk about it generally and specific to Macintosh Middle School. Lockers are kind of a blessing and a curse. And so we talk a lot about, should we have lockers just in general as part of, say, a construction project. Specific to Macintosh Middle School, we found that the locker pods at Macintosh Middle School were themselves a safety issue, because what they did is they created zones that a school-level administrator couldn't surveil. So if you imagine yourself walking out into a central courtyard and wanting to be able to see where are my children and what are they doing, and you put a locker pod that separates some of those kids from what I can see, that in itself creates the potential for bad things to happen on the other side of that locker pod. So at Macintosh Middle School, we removed those locker pods, and we did it at several of other middle schools as well, really just to take that safety hazard away so that school-based administrators could see where their kids were and what they were doing.
Okay, I'd like to take a Facebook question right now and then follow up with you, Dr. Schmidt.
We do have a Facebook question from Sharon. It's related to the announcement of a threat. However, perhaps why sometimes there's a lag in the announcement of the resolution to that threat. So not sure who would like to take that question.
Well, I'll start, and then certainly everyone can jump in, because that really is one of the most difficult decisions that we have to make, is what to communicate and when. We want to make sure that we are putting out accurate information, and we want to do that in a timely way. But sometimes those are opposite forces, is that to be timely, sometimes you have to be a little less accurate. And so we try to take some time to understand the threat. In a best case scenario, we've identified the threat, we've assessed the threat, and we can communicate the entire scope. Other times we're limited on time and we have to share information and it's incomplete. You had mentioned the role of parents. I have a special appeal here, is that we have to work to take away the incentive that some students have for making threats. Our history has shown that when we receive a threat and then we communicate it out to the larger larger community, you can almost count on about 50% attendance at school the next day, regardless of our message. And many times our message is, we've received a threat, we have a full understanding of the threat, it's not credible, we've dealt with it, but we just want you to know. And we still have half of our kids in attendance the next day. And that serves as an incentive for students to make threats because they get out of going to school the next day.
And I think that's it's a balance, because for many of us, and certainly as all of us who have children, and you think of their child being at school and hearing that, your natural reaction is to make sure that they're safe. And so part of this process and this communication piece is letting people know what our process is, that we are proactive, and that there is a detailed threat assessment procedures. So once we make that announcement that everything is certainly safe, that they can have confidence in what the support mechanisms. But again, making sure that we are proactive with alerting families to what's going on, so the rumor mill doesn't also happen, which can be just as dangerous. So.
Absolutely. Dr. Schmidt, back to that question about lockers.
Yes.
As a middle school principal, can you tell us if Venice Middle School has lockers? And
No.
if they don't? Oh, you said no. Why don't you have lockers?
Well, actually, physically, we do have lockers. They're in locker pods, actually, and they're the width of an entire building, and they're open on both ends. And so we would need, additional staff to maintain and supervise those areas, which is just not possible. But more than that, from the students' perspective, they're 3 high, 3 and sometimes 4 lockers high. So if we're looking at a 12-inch locker stacked 3 high with middle school students trying to be in the same place at the same time, I think we're asking for trouble. But we're very fortunate here in Sarasota County. Our textbooks are online. We're not asking kids to bring books. We have classroom sets in the room. So if they're walking around with a hefty big bag, let's wonder why that would be, because there's no need to carry all of that anymore. So, but our kids bring book bags too, and we've worked it out that we work from a place of trust, not being naive as to what could happen or what might be in a book bag, but from a place of trust that their school things and items that they need for the day are in there. But I will tell you that if we have a questionable situation about a book bag, we will definitely chase after that and find out as to what's in there. But not a problem at Venice Middle. So.
Okay. We are designing schools actually differently today than when I was coming through school in Sarasota County. How are these schools being designed differently to keep students safe?
Pretty dramatically different, I guess, is the bottom line. Certainly in the state of Florida, and certainly since Columbine, there's been a dramatic shift in the way we design and build schools. Pre-Columbine, and many of the campuses we have here in Sarasota today were designed to be open campuses. Enjoy the weather, you live in a place where you want to be outside. Post-Columbine, though, there's really been a focus on what we call CPTED. That's an acronym that stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. And what CPTED essentially says is, when you design and build a school, design it with an eye towards safety and security. Think about where your access points are. Think about where your hallways are. Even things as simple as when you landscape, make sure that landscape doesn't create places for people to hide, blocking camera views. So there's a lot that goes into that design to force things like single point visitor access control. So the design of schools today is very different than it was prior to 1999.
Well, you've got to rethink it. How is the decision actually made, and by whom, to say lock down a school? And that term lockdown, that's a rough term. Maybe Dr. Burns, you can take that?
Yes. So I like the way you framed the idea of lockdown. There are different types of lockdowns that we have. I think when we think of the word lockdown, it used to be kids hiding under a desk. There was no instruction. All the lights were off and they were closed. So the first thing I would want to share is that we have different levels of lockdown, and in some instances in a lockdown situation, it's just a way to put us in a heightened state of security on our campus, but instruction can still be occurring in those classrooms. So that's the first thing I think it's important to understand when we talk about lockdowns, is the different levels of lockdown that we have access to here in Sarasota County. The other piece is depending on the threat that we receive, if it's a threat that we receive early enough, we really do use a systems or a team approach to make make that decision that's in the best interest of each and every one of our students. So we'd always call Mr. Andreas immediately with Director of Safety and Security, also our executive directors at our middle school, high school, and elementary level to consult them as well. But certainly in an issue, if there were an emergency and we couldn't get a hold of them, we would also certainly be making those decisions immediately as needed to move us into a heightened security alert or into a lockdown situation, and then again always reaching out to our counterparts at our central office for support.
Okay.
Well, I think one part of that's important is how do we communicate that with the families of the students that are in that school. So, and if you want to address that, because I think that's a relevant part, and again, kind of to avoid the misinformation. So that's
sure. And so we continue to, if we're in a lockdown situation, is working with our communications department as well. So we really focus with the communications department. They really assist us with our ConnectEd messages, whether it's the written ConnectEd messages or the ConnectEd messages where you hear the voicemail. So they draft something. We give them all the pertinent information and facts to be able to, as Dr. Bowden said, communicate actually what's happening. But then we also have to focus on the in-house communication. We really learned that at Riverview this year when we were in a lockdown situation, that it's important to also keep that communication going on the inside of where we are, because we also want our students and our faculty and staff or any visitors that are on campus to be aware of the situation as well. So we focus on the exterior communication with our director of communications, but then we're also at that same time focused on the inside as well.
You know, and I think it's real important that you stay tuned to official lines of communication. You know, many of our students now are carrying phones with them, and then the text messages start almost immediately. And so part of when we deal with those crises, we have to deal with a bunch of misinformation at the same time, and rumor control and some other things. And there's one thing you should never do when you hear that your child's school is in a lockdown, and that is report to that school, is that you are going to be turned away. All of our lockdowns include restricting access to and from the campus. And what happens is your natural instinct as a parent is to go and get my child. I want my child in my custody. And so you hear your child's school is in a lockdown. Parents want to go and sign their kids out. And what happens is they get turned away at the property line. You get traffic issues in and around schools. Sometimes it impacts first responders' access to the campus. And so what we say is stay tuned to official communication. We will let you know what's going on. Once the campus is opened back up, if you feel like you need to come and lay eyes on your kid for your own peace of mind, do it at that point of time. But you should not be reporting to a school during any type of lockdown.
as hard as that may be, and I can only imagine. No, and I think how important it is, and that's it's going back to what I'd said earlier. Is it is truly systematic, and it's procedural, and it's practiced constantly, and it's a very different time that we're living in, and as terrifying as that sounds, if you look at lessons learned from tragic situations in the past, it was a lot of times because circumstances like that happened. So very good point.
A lot of moving parts here.
Yeah.
A lot of people juggling responsibilities as well. We have a Facebook question now.
Vicki, can I jump in real quick on that piece? Because when parents do respond to a school, they may actually prolong the emergency status. If we're in a lockdown, you may actually prolong the lockdown or some heightened security level. So if we have something happening that's on our campus or adjacent to a campus or heading in the direction of a campus, and it involves someone on foot or one or two people or a vehicle, whatever, and then we have and we're looking for someone to identify, and then we have parents coming in on our campuses, then we have to look at all of those people coming on, because they may be the person we're looking for. So by parents coming onto a campus during an emergency status, they may actually be prolonging the incident for the school. So it's something we should think about.
Okay, let's take that Facebook question.
We've got a few questions related to security, and I think it's great for this panel. We're almost out of time with the panel, but I'm gonna gang up two questions here. Ron is getting some good feedback for his question, and then I'll ask the question from Jasmiza. Ron asked, what precautions are being made for special needs students that have been bullied by others? And then Jasmiza writes, how would a parent report security issues at a school? So I think this would be perfect for maybe principals, and Michael, maybe you.
Sure.
I'll start with the bullying question. We take bullying very seriously. That's another topic that we talk with our students about as we make those visitations to classrooms and have assembly programs. It's really about teach, reteach, and we can't teach that enough. Civility is absolutely key. It's what we need and what we strive for at our school, that everyone, has the opportunity, to have a safe and, great experience. And when we find out, maybe by, from the proposed victim or a friend that might want to report something, we take that very seriously. We go into investigation mode. We want to know more. And so we collect, witness statements, and we want to hear what the kids have to say. And everything that we learn as we go through the process of identifying who the bully, the bully is, we leave no stone unturned. We don't allow it. We chase after it, and then we talk about it. And hopefully at some point we can find, a resolution between the bully and the bullier. Not always possible, but it would be wonderful if that could happen. But there are consequences for the decisions that we make. And what we say and what we do is what we own. And so, excuse me, we try to educate. I repeat myself when I say teach and reteach, because you just can't do it once and be done. But at Venice Middle, and I'm sure with my fellow sister middle schools, as well as all of our schools, principals take this very seriously. We want happy children, and happy, children have great experiences, and the learning process just continues.
Okay.
So I'd like to add just a couple quick comments about modern day bullying. And so in the days, in the past, bullying would happen at a school and it would be done. You'd have this little exchange between people and it would go home and it would be the end. In today's world, modern day bullying is persistent and it's relentless. And so when a student has something happen to him and her at school, and someone whips out another child whips out their phone and videotapes it, that incident, that piece of embarrassment lives forever.
Yeah.
And all night long, every day until it stopped, that kid is pinged by a group of kids, and the harassment is relentless, and it's 24/7. And so kids today are just it's so sad to see how bullying impacts kids today, because they become sort of the movie star of their own little horror show, if you will, that lives on the internet, and it is persistent. And so for me, I'd love to see some schools, we have to look at some issues about phone use and when phones are shut off and things, because every time that phone pings, the kid relives that incident, and it's just terrible.
That's really a good point. What do you tell parents after something happens and you, say, discipline a student for, say, bullying or, say, making a threat? Can you follow up with a report as to what happened to, say, the perpetrator?
Well, and I have to tell you that's the most difficult question that we get from parents, is because they want to safeguard their child, but then they want a definitive answer, is what happened to the aggressor. Unfortunately, that aggressor has protections, and so we can't tell you little Johnny got detention or is in counseling or has been suspended, because that's someone else's child, and we have specific laws that protect the flow of information. And so you need to have a line of communication through the guidance office and the administration at your child's school. And you need to listen to what they're telling you, is that when a principal says, I'm on it, I'm taking care of this incident, you have to have confidence that although the principal can't tell you that student X received detention, counseling, suspension, you have to trust that they're following through. But we get that question all the time, and they want closure. That's what it's really about, is tell me what happened, just give me that peace of mind that my child is going to be safe.
And I just want to tail on that, though, is that I think from the board's level, it's kind of, you speak to the policy aspect, and then it drills down to you procedurally, and then but again, going back to that culture and understanding that that is not acceptable behavior, and teaching it as early as you possibly can, and then also, but at home, and families need to recognize that adults also have to practice that, that good behavior and be role models, really. So.
Yes. Scott, did you have to?
Well, I was just going to make a comment, and maybe derail the process here a little bit, but I know we're getting really close to the end. And I wanted to go back to both Dr. Bowden and Mr. Andreas have talked about the idea of a system of security. And there's a whole bunch of pieces of our system of security that we haven't touched on tonight. So I just kind of wanted to touch on a laundry list of those very quickly. For 17,000, 18,000 of our kids every day, their day begins and ends on a school bus. And so we have a big part of our system that is about the maintenance of those buses and making sure that they're safe before our kids get on them. It then goes to the training and the retraining of the drivers that are operating those buses to ensure that those students get to school safely. In all of our cafeterias, and we probably serve about 35,000 meals a day in our district, all of our staff are Serve Safe trained. That means they understand something about the safe preparation and serving of school to make sure that the kitchen and dining experience is safe. Our custodians spend a great deal of time in classrooms, not just getting them clean, but getting them disinfected, so we don't worry about things like MRSA and swine flu and those things that you hear about in some other schools. Indoor air quality instances where somebody says, I feel like I'm having trouble breathing in this space. Is there something going on? We react rapidly and definitively to those kinds of things. So just some examples of the broad pieces of the system that Mike talked about that really are about the broad idea of keeping our kids safe when they're in our care.
And I've got another question for you. Maybe we'll do it after the break, but I want to thank everyone for these answers. A lot of good information shared here tonight. We'll be back after a short break. Please continue to send your questions via Facebook. And then there'll be some information at the bottom of your screen about the referendum renewal vote that's coming up in March. And we'll also be talking about a lot of other topics after the break, so stay with us.
Sarasota County Schools Digital Town Hall will return shortly. Until then, here is a presentation on how referendum funding affects all your public and charter schools.
Thank you so much for coming back. And thank you for joining us on Facebook Live, Twitter, the Education Channel on Comcast 20 and Frontier 33. This event is also streamed on our website, SarasotaCountySchools.net. I also want to remind you that information about the March referendum renewal that you saw on the screen during the break is also on the home page on our website. It's in the Hot Topics section. Now, the first segment was all about school safety and security. For the second half, we're going to talk about a myriad of topics. You know that we've been talking to the superintendent, Dr. Bowden, also Sarasota County Schools Board Chair, Bridget Ziegler, and the Assistant Superintendent for Operations, Scott Limpy. But two new guests join us, and I'd like for them to introduce themselves. One of them I've known for many, many years. Go ahead, Laura.
I'm Laura Kingsley, and I am the Chief Operating Officer for Academics.
Oh, and I'm Mitzi Corcoran. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the school district.
Thank you so much. We'd like to start with two topics that are on the minds of many people, it seems, today. This is our current negotiations with the Sarasota Classified Teachers Association, the union that represents teachers and support staff. Ann writes, why is the school district not moving in a proactive manner to negotiate the current year teacher contract? We are almost halfway through the school year with no resolution. On the same topic, Mark also wrote, why can't we agree on what to pay our teachers?
Well, let me take a crack at that.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I just want to make sure you understand the sensitivity that negotiations are ongoing. Matter of fact, today we had 4 or 5 hours of negotiations. So as someone said, it's crunch time. And I think we all feel the need to get this done. And so I'm confident in our bargaining team. I'm confident in the leadership at SCTA. I will go as far as to say I would be disappointed on a personal level if we've not reached agreement before we break for winter break. And so we understand, and so we hear you loud and clear. We understand the importance. We understand that it's time to get it done, but we need to make sure that we respect the collective bargaining process and know that we're hard at work to make that happen.
All right. Did you hear that? He said loud and clear. He hears it. All righty. School Board Chair Ziegler, here's a question from Sarah, a middle school teacher in our district. And Sarah writes, can the school board please explain what the plans are to retain teachers in our district? I am concerned for my younger colleagues who are just starting out, who cannot afford to, say, be own their own home.
Absolutely. Well, it kind of blends very much to the topics that are discussed in as it relates to negotiations. But for us, obviously, the most important thing is having a high-quality teacher in our classrooms for the success of our students. And there is it's no secret that the teacher shortage across not just Sarasota County or the state, it's nationally. So trying to figure out ways to attract those quality teachers to Sarasota. One, Sarasota is a wonderful place to live. I think our district speaks for itself. It's a wonderful place to work, but ultimately, it's not just the financial component of having competitive salaries, but it's also the environment in which they work and having the supportive elements. So it is a constant discussion to ensure that we are proactively seeking the best and brightest, no pun intended, to be here in Sarasota County.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Ziegler. Mr. Limpy, a subject that has been in the news lately is the complaint by an employee that she is being given poor performance evaluations in retaliation for previous harassment allegations she made about the superintendent. Can you speak to this issue?
Sure. Let me say a couple of things. First, we will investigate this complaint with the same rigor and the same integrity that we would investigate any such complaint. The superintendent has recused himself from the process and asked me to kind of take the lead in how the process is going to work. The chair and I met this morning with the school board's council to talk about process. Our next step, just so everyone knows, is at the December 12th work session, we have put some time on that work session agenda to talk with the board at large in the public about process. Staff is going to bring a recommendation to the board. Staff in this case will be myself and the school board's attorney. That recommendation is at least initially going to be that we hire an outside investigator to investigate this complaint. And that really is about making sure that there is not even the perception about any kind of undue influence in the process. So we'll have that conversation on Tuesday next week with the board. Really important to understand that the initial complaint as written was against the employee's supervisor, not a retaliation complaint against the superintendent.
But one thing is a broader process, and especially how important it is to make sure that it's done with integrity and making sure that people have confidence in that process. So assuring that, essentially having this discussion just to ensure that the board all agrees that that's the best, in fact, way to move forward. So.
And a reminder that it is an open investigation, so there's only so much that you can say.
So we won't discuss the investigation until it's closed. Assuming that the board, assuming we can reach some agreement on Tuesday, we would initiate that investigation immediately. Once the investigation is complete, then of course all those documents are a matter of record. But you're right, during the pendency of the investigation, we won't talk about the specific details of the investigation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much. And as I said at the top of the segment, in March, voters will be given the opportunity to renew the $1 million referendum to support their Sarasota County schools. And I remember as a reporter having to report on this referendum. Mrs. Corcoran, as the school district's assistant superintendent, chief financial officer, can you tell us what the referendum vote is and when it will take place?
Well, it's taking place March 20th.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
On March 20th, and it would be a renewal. So it is not a tax increase. It's a renewal of the existing $1 million referendum that we have in place. It represents about 13% of our annual operating revenue, and it allows us to provide enhanced services above what the state provides to us in funding. So it allows us to have 30 additional minutes of instruction, which equates to 18 additional days of instruction for our students. I don't think there's there's additional guidance counselors, art, music, drama teachers, technology support, additional security. It funds a myriad of things. 580 positions are tied to this funding also. And I just think that there has to be a correlation between all of these additional enhanced funds coming into the district since 2002, and we have been in a district every one of those years. We're one of only two in the entire state.
And I'm certain you want to jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot. Interrupt. No, I think even tailing back into your question on, what are we doing to attract and retain high-quality teachers? There's a lot of things. It's not just the base pay, but it's all of the supporting programs that we have. And the other part that I think is wonderful that shouldn't be overlooked is the generosity of this community, and it's illustrated at our board meetings in a myriad of ways as well. But this is one element that really allows Sarasota County to shine, and this is an exciting time where because it's unique. I think if you look around the state, people are often very look with envy that we have such a supportive community and able to support our students and our teachers. So it is an exciting time, and we'll be sharing it with the community to make sure that they're aware of the value that this referendum dollar brings to the district.
Dr. Bowden, it's a great time.
Absolutely. I just want to say loud and clear that resources do matter, and the resources that we're entrusted with, we don't take lightly. And so just to say a heartfelt thank you to our community that they have put education in the position that it is. I mean, they have on 4 different occasions voted to support this referendum, and that's not lost on us in the field. Is that Sarasota is a different place because of the way that we are treated by our community. So I always start with a thank you. Thank you for the way that this community embraces our schools, and just a pledge to continue doing the hard work of educating the students of this community, and we benefit from that in so many ways. But just a note of appreciation, and just to say that resources do matter, and that we're the district we are because of the resources that we're entrusted with.
Does the money absolutely stay here locally?
Yes. It's collected locally and stays locally.
And another part that I want to tail off on is that because there is such a generosity that we don't take it lightly, that there's explicit oversight to ensure that that's being used in a manner that's allowing us to move forward with student success. So I think that's a very important part, that there's an oversight that the board plays a role to make sure that the dollars in which they've entrusted us with is being executed with purpose. So
I don't want to play the devil's advocate, but I have to ask, what happens if it doesn't pass? What happens? Are there plans in place?
Well, that really is a scenario that, as a superintendent and as a financial officer, keeps you up at night, is that is renewed in 4-year increments. Nothing is promised, but as 13% of our general revenue, it would have impacts across our district. It would impact the salaries that we pay. It would impact the services that we offer. To get to a 13% reduction in general funds, it would be impossible to get there without going through salaries, and it would be impossible to get there without going through programs. We would have to change the way that we do business. We would have to eliminate positions, and we'd have to impact the pay of those that work for the system. And so that's something that keeps you up at night. But yes, you kind of have to keep an eye on that, because nothing is promised. There are no guarantees.
Well, and I think that's an important part, because there's a balance, and something that, personally speaking, I think that trying to separate it out in a way that it's not, because it is not guaranteed. And quite frankly, every year there's an evaluation of not knowing specifically what our funding will be, but that is a very large chunk. So ensuring that we're proactively have a plan in place in the event that were ever to happen in the future is an important factor. So to look at it and budget accordingly. But yes, that would be detrimental.
What would you need parents to do to help you spread the word? Anything?
I mean,
register and vote.
Well, yeah, no. So, I mean,
Share with their neighbors.
There's certainly been a conversation, and I've mentioned it. It's certain to me. We've talked about the renewal's always been in March 20th, or excuse me, in March, and making sure I'd like to personally see it move to a general election, but right now it's in March, and so ensuring that families know they register to vote and are aware of the value that it brings to the district.
Okay.
You know, not all of our community members have students in our schools, so particularly our parents, to be able to say what it does for their child. And then we go to great lengths to make sure that the community understands that the benefits of the referendum don't just accrue to the school kids and their families. But, you know, when we talk to realtors, I mean, it affects property values. And so to the whole community, to educate yourself, to understand what the referendum does, not just for our schools and for our school kids, but for our community as a whole, and make a decision on March 20th based on those facts.
All right, we have a Twitter question right now.
Yes, and actually we're getting many more questions from Facebook than Twitter tonight, so I'm tag teaming it with my colleague here, and I'll ask a Facebook question from Carrie Ann. She wants to know if any consideration is being given to providing transportation for students that live more than a mile away from the school but are currently not getting transportation. Mr. Lemby?
Sure. So the conversation starts off with what the statute obligates us to do. And so generally speaking, the law says if you live more than 2 miles from your school, we have an obligation to provide transportation, and the bus stop has to be generally within 1.5 miles of your home. And I will tell you that our service level is a whole lot higher than that today, but there's always a balance between service level and kind of the cost of that service. And so we look for that balance where we're providing families the opportunities that they desire in doing doing it with a way that doesn't break the bank with the board. So in the example you just gave, live more than 1.5 miles and don't have transportation, I would almost like to talk to whoever submitted that thing, and they can reach me here at the landings, but I almost like to talk to them about their situation, because it doesn't make sense unless they are choicing to another school. So if I live, let me use an example that comes up a lot. I live in the city of Northport, and I want my student to attend the IB program at Riverview High School. Right now, what we tell them is, here's the Riverview High School attendance zone. That's where our buses go. If you can get your student to one of those Riverview stops, we'll get them the rest of the way. That's an untenable situation for a lot of those families. Frankly, one of the reasons I like the fact that we now have ACE and IB in all of our ACE or IB in all of our high schools. But generally, we try to work with the family and provide them something that works, with the understanding that, particularly with choice, oftentimes that choice comes with the responsibility then to get your student to your choice school.
And I think that's a great point to emphasize, is that 2-mile distance from the school. If it's beyond 2 miles, it's an absolute. We will provide transportation. But the opposite is not true, that if it's within 2 miles, it's not absolute that we will not. We have to understand the individual circumstance, and the best way to communicate that is through your school administration. Your school administration then has a route coordinator who literally will go out and look at some of the environmental considerations. But I just want to make sure it's not lost that that 2-mile line is not absolute if you're within it. So we need to understand that situation.
And a couple of good examples I'll give you that fit that. One is exceptional student education students. If in many cases their disability will require door-to-door service, and so it doesn't matter where they live, we're going to go to their front door. And in other cases, if we deem statutorily that the walk is unsafe, then we would provide transportation for those students too. So superintendent's right. There are times when we would come out and look at the situation, and even within 2 miles.
Let me jump in here. We've got a Facebook question.
We do. Facebook's heating up. It's been hot all night. We've got a question. I think I want to bring in Laura. It's an academic question. It comes to us from Talia, and she writes, being that this is the computer age, it appears just about everything children do at school is on a computer. Are they being taught proper body mechanics, and are they given a break during tests for their eyes? And there's a related question from another person on Facebook. Are students taught how to type, or do they need to go to Sarasota virtual school for, maybe we can gang that up into a general question. If something's not taught at our schools, where do people go?
Well, so
Multiple questions.
I will start with the typing question. Yes, children are in classes at all of our elementary schools. I still see some of our children typing like this, but that's okay because I see some of our staff typing like this. And you know, the funny thing is, when you think about what our children will experience in the future, you have to wonder if typing is part of the deal, right? You wonder if it's not going to be different technologies that they face. And what was the first part of the question?
The first part, I think, was sitting in a chair, perhaps body mechanics.
Oh.
Do students rest if they're being tested on a computer?
Digital use.
Yeah.
Ergonomics, perhaps. Do they stand up, wiggle?
Well, it's funny. Across our district, we have often classrooms that you'll go in where teachers are using yoga balls, and children are sitting on specially designed chairs that allow movement. But, you know, our hope is that the children are moving throughout the day and not sitting for long periods of time. Testing, I know they give really great strategies to those children ahead of time to help them stay focused, including body stretches and the things that you see office workers doing to relieve their stress when they're sitting.
I want to ask you, Laura, before we wrap, I feel that we're running out of time, but I do want to get this in. That achievement gap, we've got great teachers, we got fine buildings. What is being done, though, to close that achievement gap? And I know that you're the person to ask on this panel.
Well, and you're going to have to hook me because there's a lot being done. There are so many passionate people that are working in our district on things like, and not just staff, but we have foundations working with us, supporting things like reading recovery and trying to prevent the achievement gap at young ages, getting kids to school. And, there are lots of foundations that are working with us on attendance initiatives. We have a lot of our children are experiencing support during the day from their a variety of teachers that come in and help them to fill those gaps. But I guess the number one thing for me that we are really focused on is developing relationship. That's the very first thing that needs to happen. And before you wrap, I'm sharing a book.
Plug it.
I didn't get to talk very much today, but this book is all about relationships and, the messages that we give children and the language that we use. Does it fill their bucket or doesn't it? And there are ways. You were talking about civility earlier. I have my civility pin from the Gulf Coast Community Foundation. You'll be hearing more about that. There are ways that we can really give positive messages to our kids that allow them to really learn that growth mindset. You can do it. I'm not going to give up on you. This is important, and you can do it.
Wow, that is such a wonderful place to end.
Yes, indeed.
Jeez, does anybody have anything to add before I start wrapping? I need to wrap. Anybody?
I mean, stemming off what you just said, it just gives it, wow. But no, really, we have some amazing leadership and also amazing teachers and educational and just the entire staff. So a lot for Sarasota to be proud of.
We are out of time now. Thank you so much for such a stimulating conversation. I've learned a lot as I've asked questions and heard questions coming from the audience. It has been great. And I want to thank our audience for joining us. We're going to have another digital town hall in early March. We are going to tell you more about it the closer we get to it. In the meantime, if you have more questions or other questions on topics that we did not get to, we'd like for you to click on Contact Us, the telephone icon on the top of our homepage at SarasotaCountySchools.net. And on that page, you'll learn how to call us, where to send emails, questions. Until next time, until our next digital town hall, thank you so much and have a great holiday.
Bravo,